Steve Prescott, hands up! For Steve Prescott, hands up! For Steve Prescott.
Today on the agenda, why we need a reserve league team, or do we need a reserve league team? What do you think?
I think we do. I think it's got to a stage now. Even Hetherington's come out and said that it's a good idea now, which is all you need to know. It's always been a good idea.
That's the first I've heard of that.
It's always been a good idea, and the people that were trying to argue against it, there's just no logical reason.
So why do you think we need it then?
I think personally, you've got to look at, well, first and foremost, obviously we spoke about scrapping the cap last week, and if that does come into play, you've got to look at expanding squad sizes, and if you've got a squad of 32, 36, you can't get every player playing every single week. There's also the argument of rehabilitation. Obviously, you've seen a lot of players come back from lengthy injuries over the last couple of years. Luke Gale, Don Manfredi are going through another...
Gareth Ellis
going through another long period of injuries, and having that reserve grade ready to bring them back through to full fitness, being able to play 40 minutes in the reserves and 60 minutes in the reserves and 80 minutes in the reserves before they go and play first team rugby again is vitally important, because you can't rely on these players that are coming back from long injuries being eligible to play in an under-19s competition or dual registration competition just to play games. You need the ability to go and play more games, and it will obviously bring the competition level higher, in my opinion. You're going to get people playing competitive rugby every single week. They're going to, over a period of time, the standard will slowly start to improve, even at the top.
And what do you think about dual regs there, though? Shouldn't that come in with it? Do we need a reserve team?
No, dual registration is frankly an insult to rugby league, and I think whoever invented it needs to be tortured, frankly, because it's just a ridiculous idea. 2016, Hull FC won the Challenge Cup, and Kirk Yeaman became the first ever player to win the Challenge Cup twice with Hull FC. And he nearly didn't, because earlier on in the season he had been playing on dual registration at Doncaster, and they wanted him to play in the Challenge Cup for them. And it was only Lee Radford saying, no, because I might need him for the Challenge Cup later on. I can't have him cup tied.
Is that just a one-off though? Does that normally happen with dual reg?
I believe that players regularly turn out in the Challenge Cup for their dual reg clubs, and then it stops them playing maybe later on for Super League clubs, for clubs that have got possibly a chance of winning it.
So would you be for a reserve team then?
Absolutely, definitely we need a reserve league. When you look at the standard of the players that we've got coming in, that are being brought in from the NRL now, for instance, you know, you've got at Leeds, you've got Trent Merrin and Conrad Hurrell. At Hull FC at the moment, we've got Sika Manu and whoever else we might go and get for next season. At Warrington, you've got people like Blake Austin, you've got Gareth Widdop coming in next year. You get your young guys in a reserve league training alongside those sorts of players. You know, how much of a difference does it make to them personally? You know, to be training with these guys, you know, dual reg is what it is, and you know, I mean, you look at the way that Leeds have treated Jordan Lilly, the way that they've worked with Luke Briscoe. You know, I've seen weeks when Luke Briscoe was playing. One night he's playing for Featherstone, and then a few nights later he's playing for Leeds, and probably about half knackered. You know, and you're sending them out on dual reg, you're sending them to a different club, you're sending them to a different culture, a different way of playing. Yeah. You keep them at your club, you keep them playing in the reserves, you keep them playing against other Super League players, and you are keeping that core of the club in there, and you know they're learning the way of the Hull FC way of doing things, the Wigan way of doing things, the St Helens way of doing things, and you know, and it benefits absolutely everybody.
Is it not working the way we have it now, though?
I think there's arguments to definitely say that there's for certain individuals it's definitely working for them. Obviously you've got academy products that did go out on dual reg that have come back and are now excellent and stars of Super League. There's obviously, I don't know the dual reg for most teams. So I know Wigan have one with Swinton, and most players that have come through at Wigan that are Wiganers have played at Swinton at some point in the last, and that obviously does help. I'm not against dual registration. I think dual registration is a good idea for the 18-year-olds that are on the fringes that can't quite make the first team, even probably wouldn't even make a reserve team if there was one available. So they should be going, especially to teams like Swinton, like Dewsbury, the teams that can't really afford to build their own side. They should be given a chance to build a team that is capable of competing. Especially for the likes of Rochdale, Swinton, Dewsbury, even Batley, who are having to compete against the likes of the pro teams like Widnes and Bradford and Toronto and Lee. They're always going to struggle. I feel like you need to allow them an opportunity. Even if giving 18-year-olds chance to play first team rugby is giving them an opportunity to compete, then it's perfect for both sides. But I do think we need the reserve league. I think the reserve league is something completely different that it's not being spoken about. I think mainly the reserve league is for those fringe players. We've had a lot of injuries in the Super League. There's a lot of teams that are depleted in numbers, and not even just for rehabilitation. At the start of the season, if we had a reserve league, those players that are now playing in the first team that were sat on the bench for the first 3 or 4 games, it would have been better to see them playing reserve league fixtures to get into the first team than just sat on the bench for 3 or 4 weeks.
Can I just stop you there for a minute? You mentioned Jordan Lilly, which kind of comes into what you're saying. He's been on dual reg. Yeah. And do you not think by being at Bradford Bulls it was a decision that was made that he probably wasn't happy with at first, but has excelled in being able to play weekly and have the opportunity, which if he had stayed at Leeds, he wouldn't have probably had that opportunity. And now he's bought into that culture at Bradford. And
but unless I'm much mistaken, Jordan Lilly is still very much a Leeds Rhinos player and could be called upon by Leeds Rhinos at any time.
Absolutely,
and the fact is, at the moment, with the best will in the world, he's playing in a championship side. If Leeds had a reserve team, he'd be playing in a Leeds reserve team against other Super League standard players, and he would be benefiting from that.
Would that not probably be this same kind of people who would be in that reserve team which he is playing with on dual reg now anyway? So what would it matter?
No, because at the moment he is only playing against other championship players.
Opposed to maybe not playing had he stayed in his team.
But he's also, at the moment, he's playing at a different club. He's playing for a different coach. He's playing under a different culture and a different way of playing. If Leeds suddenly wanted to use Jordan Lilly in a game, the kid would look lost.
But is it all that bad because he's continuously still playing?
Yeah, he's still playing.
Yeah, in a different team.
In a reserve league, if we had this reserve league that we all keep saying that we need, if we had this reserve league, he would still be playing every week anyway in a reserve league.
With the same people that he's playing with now, though, in the Championship League?
He would be playing against other Super League players.
With John Lilly is one of those exceptions where you've got to look at it in a case that he is a player that should be playing in Super League realistically. He's having to work his way to get there because obviously he's fallen out of favour at Leeds. It's sort of an exceptional circumstance in that he probably deserves to be in Super League, but I think he'll get sold to Bradford at the end of the day. I don't think he'll stay at Leeds. So I think long term he's probably in the right place for him, which makes it a slightly exceptional circumstance. I think in terms of the dual registration itself, it should be there to benefit, because at the minute we're at a situation where obviously the Super League teams are all professional teams, but half of the Championship are professional, half aren't. And we're at a situation where we're crossing who is competitive and who not. So you need to decide whether you want these semi-pro clubs to just fall down. The League One's a semi-pro division, or you want them all to be competing, even if they are a semi-pro club, which is where dual registration comes in handy for those people. The professional clubs should and can afford loan deals, and maybe that's the market that we should be advertising to the professional teams in the Championship.
But when you look at it, you look at teams that have had reserve teams at the moment. You've got reserve teams at Halifax, at Keighley, at South Wales Scorpions. And they're there, they're playing, and you know if they're saying they can afford it, then don't tell me that teams like Leeds and Wigan and Warrington etc. can't afford it.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2016 we had 4 Super League teams that ran reserve teams. Those 4 teams were Wigan, Warrington, Hull FC and St Helens, and as Tony Smith pointed out, at the end of that, after they won the League Leaders' Shield at the Cacom Stadium, they said they're the top 4 teams, and they're 3 of them are the ones that are taking out the silverware.
You're saying the proof is in the pudding of that.
Yeah, because they had reserve teams, so that you know they Warrington they got a bloke coming through their reserve team then called Declan Patton, you know, and they had a bloke called Tom Lynham playing for them that year, playing for their reserves that year. 2017, Jake Connor was playing reserves for Hull FC. You know, the proof is there to show that how much this benefits everybody, and you put them, like I say, alongside players like I mentioned, you know, who have been there and done it and won it all, you know, and it can only benefit them. You know, at the moment you've got a lad called Connor Wynne for Hull FC, who's making a very big noise in the Super League at the moment, and he's doing that because he's been playing against other Super League players for Hull FC reserves first. I mean, Gareth Ellis came out of retirement for us earlier this season, but his first game was a reserve game against Wakefield Trinity. In 2017, he had a reserve game a couple of weeks before playing the Challenge Cup semi-final against Leeds. You know, that there is the benefit.
You agree?
You know,
I agree there's definitely a benefit for the reserve league. I think rehabilitation is definitely the main point for the top players. Obviously there's other ways of going about it, like as you see in professional football or even in cricket, you'll get short-term deals. People going to other clubs that will benefit them much greater than being in a reserve team. But I feel like the need for the reserve team comes past the point of maybe progression of a player and more to a point of rehabilitation and allowing older players to have an influence on younger players.
Well, tell us what you think. Do we need a reserve team in the Super League? Comment below if you think yes. Give us a thumbs up. But let us know your thoughts.
Watch every game of the NRL, plus the grand final and State of Origin from anywhere outside Australia, New Zealand or the Pacific Islands. Go to watchnrl.com and take the footy with you.